This is IBM Museum, and a little bit of an oddball video. Not what I intended. I'll probably go through and record the others that I did have planned, but I want to look this over first. So let me get the internal webcam off, and I'll get turned around and kind of show what's up. And I think it's all the light sources that is causing the just the whole scene to be kind of dim here. It's kind of funny. The more light seems like it's going through and just creating the condition that it seems really dim on my recording system. The external monitor I have here seems fine. And I'll be going through and actually using this background monitor as well. And so what I have connected, I do have one of these USB microscopes, and it's plugged in. Of course, that's the reason that the light is on, and I'll go through and show that in a moment. It's just that when I go through, and this is the Model 30 planer with the Revision 00 BIOS that's in here, just that really stripped down machine. I do have the cover back on, just to kind of have a little bit of platform for my tools and other things. But one of the things I was noticing, in fact, I wonder if, let's go through and I can bring up this source, just showing that narrower area, and hopefully without bumping the cabling or the camera too much. You probably saw a little bit of wobble there. I went through and I threaded the cable through of the keyboard connection one way, and then I determined I had to go through that same direction. So let me go through. Now, for the Model 30, it didn't matter. And normally on the previous videos, and of course this Model 30 planer is not fastened down the best that it could be on here. There's normally a screw that goes in right there that holds that towards the back. But you'll notice that this is the connection I use, because I could put the keyboard on either port with this to work with this planer. I didn't have to have the mouse plugged in. When I went through, and this is the port 2 that you normally have the mouse connected, and this doesn't have the back, but normally the plastic back shows just a 1 and 2 rather than marking these as keyboard and mouse. Now on the other one, and this planer is still going to move around, but the connection just doesn't go in as deep as what it should. And I got looking. In fact, I'll go back. Let's go back to the camcorder. Okay. And so I went through and connected up this USB microscope. I'll go through and we're going to look at the port 2 first. This is the one that the cable went through and it was able to seat fully. In fact, normally it's the wiper is down, facing down for the orientation of what you see on that background screen to be, up is up, or the side of the USB microscope that's in this case. So going through, and I mean, this port looks like it's used a lot less. We're even able to see through these holes that the pins go through, that they look clear. I do have a little brush that I had around. Let's go through and swipe that around a little bit in there too, just to pull out all the hairs and everything else could be in there. Get it clean. I mean, I could go through and I could blow compressed air or something else like that in there too. But I mean, that port number 2 looks pretty clear. I mean, you can see through to these, and so going over to port 1, it seems like it's not that the keyboard just wasn't going through and seating as fully as it should. The keyboard cable, and so I realize it's a little bit hard to see on the display there, but the pin areas look free. And I went through, and even on the keyboard end, the keyboard cable is different from the mouse in that it only uses, the 4 pins. And then it's got that center piece. Of course, so you have the proper orientation of the plug in the port. Here is the mouse connection. Same way. I'm trying to get there's a great focus right there. So there's that mouse, and of course it goes through and it doesn't seat as fully as well, but it seemed like that it's right there in the center of the plug, where that plastic piece is in there, just that rectangular piece. And when I look at it closer, and so let me see if I need to adjust. I want to get the clearest picture, even though I'm able to see that background monitor here. But you'll notice in that center piece, that's just not as clean for port 1 as it is for port 2. I mean, that even has underneath, it even has some passages through, and that center piece there just looks like it's blocked. Looks like there's a piece of plastic that's in there. Now, that's a pretty small bit. If I were to drill that out, I do have a Dremel available, but I've got things like an X-Acto knife as well. And the X-Acto knife is just as good as what I would be for a dental pick too. It's going to give me, it's going to be small enough to go in there and try and work with that to see if I can get that cleared out of the way, or just do a couple swipes in there right off the bat. In fact, let's go through. Boy, that does look dark on my recording system. But let's go through. And of course, it doesn't give me as much of a view there of what's being recorded right now. That's only on my recording system, and I'm going to go through, and I'm going to pop my glasses with the bifocal And of course, this planer moving around a little bit is going to be a little bit of the challenge too. But it's just, and this is the first time I've gone through and used this planer in the time that I've had it, even for it being over 35 years old. And I don't know where I got it from. And so just the aspect of I don't know how that bit got in there, or if that was ultimately what caused this planer to not be used. Okay, and that looks different now. I realize that so there's a close-up view with the USB scope. Let me switch back to, and I could even could have done the USB microscope on the video capture system, but that's showing that piece, I mean, it looks different from what it did before. And see all those pin passageways, they look pretty clear. There's little wipers on those look like they're all in place. I mean, this keyboard port, or port number 1 on the Model 30, it's been used. You can definitely tell that the port 1 was used more than port 2, which that is. But that's how that center recess should look for that keyway of the plug. And I'll just have to see if I can work at it to get whatever it is that, plastic, probably from a keyboard plug, out of there. And I really don't want to go through and drill it out, but it's kind of where I don't know if I can just kind of sweep it out of the way, sweep it towards that. And I could go through and I could work with the planer a little bit more by pulling it out of the system too. And I'm not going to switch camera views. I just want to see for myself. Yeah, it's impossible to dislodge. I just can't. I wonder if a dental pick tool would be a little bit more useful for me. Just something with a really. Now I have also these push pins. Just as a way to get a real pointed. I'm trying to move it up towards where there's a passageway, and that, if I can get it up there, it'll. Okay. So I want to show this on the screen. I may have to do this for the whole. I may have to do this for the whole thing that's just blocking it. But let's go through. So after I ran that push pin through there, you can see that just a channel in the center of where that, I mean, I'm starting to score it out of the way, at least it looks. And I wish I could even have this microscope in place as I went through and worked on it. Almost be like a surgery scope. And I realized I didn't change my camera view or anything like that. I'm just being a little bit more aggressive with it. And it looks like it's really just centered. And I wish I could even go through and, well, that might be possible. I don't want to adjust my camera too much. Just to show kind of what's going on there a little bit. And it looks like it's notching that plastic that's in there at least. And I don't think that there's, especially down for the bottom of that recess, there's not a way to really get the pin more to either side. It seems like it just kind of hits the center. And that's probably even with the thickness that we're working with. Okay. So I don't know what to think of that. That's clear. It seems like it's clearing out. There's the port 2. The way that should look, as clean as that is, trying to adjust the focus a little bit of the USB scope just to show down there in the bottom of that recess. And then going back to port 1, there's still something that's really just kind of blocking that, clogging that section. And it looks like I'm sweeping it away slowly. Okay. And at least it hasn't told me my mic is muted or anything like that with leaning my head into this. There's port 1. That's definitely getting a clean section right there in the middle of that. It's looking a lot better. Here's port 2 with it looks like it entirely clean on that. There I just have to work at it's wanting to focus on the upper portion, and I'm trying to get it to focus in deeper. I never thought I'd be doing a video on clearing I mean, I could probably have that planer out of there and it would be more accessible to be able to go through and work with stuff. But so I'm going to try going through. I wish that planer wouldn't move around on me as much. I need to fasten that down more inside the case. And that the push pin just goes in there so much deeper. There's a lot of material that I still need to clear out of there. Yeah, so that still looks very, and see a drill bit is circular and it just doesn't do, I don't know if I need to take a needle in there more. It's just kind of funny that that center section looks like it's clearer or cleaner, and the push pin just doesn't go in there quite like it does for the port 2. I'm actually trying to put the push pin in there. Yeah, okay, and you can see where it divots. It went through and divoted that plastic. It's there when I jam the push pin in there. So I think I'm going to go through and I'll pause the video. I think I want to get to where I pin down. I mean, I can put the screw in here in that corner, but it it goes through and it just kind of blocks a little bit of my moving the scope around the outside of that. And I want to get that planer fastened. Well, maybe that's good enough. Can I put enough divots in that to get that plastic out of the way? Because it just doesn't seem like the X-Acto blade is. I wish I could get in one of those divots and kind of use it to cut away. And that plastic is not getting dislodged like I hoped it would. Just slow work of going in there and trying to clean it out deep enough. It looks like I'm just cutting it away. There's slits with the X-Acto blade that aren't really visible in the camcorder view on that background monitor. But I'm not really making much of an impact on that piece of plastic that is in there. You can see that kind of just a big. Yeah, it looks like it goes pretty deep and everything, and it's not. Compared to the port 2, that just really goes in there. Let's go through. See, because port 2, that's how deep that goes. Port 1, it doesn't go in nearly as deep. And I don't know if I need to just cut to the chase and take the drill at that, because it's getting into that plastic. There's port 2 again. How clean that is. And then that just has that mess there. And it is the lip of that recess, it's going through and distorting that a little bit when I put the pin in there and things like that. But I'm not really as worried about that. And then and that's the mouse. I mean, it doesn't matter for either one of which plug I use, because that's not really making any real headway at all. Here is the port. See, there's port 2 and port 1. The steel just doesn't seat as fully in there. So I may just have to work at it a little bit more. I don't want a super long video of me just sitting here struggling away to get a little piece of plastic out of there. But, you know, maybe it's time for me to try the Dremel and the smallest bit. Because if you get really, really small bits, then they break so easy. Oh, that's on. Yeah. It's kind of a bad thing to plug in. Okay, and that did move some plastic. But it just kind of drilled down in there. And I'm not going to have a real clean and that entire plastic piece will have to be out of there because for the rectangle, because just the end of the keyboard. And I mean, I could go through on the, I think on the keyboard end, you could go through and you could break off that. Let me go through to realize what I've got up for a camera view. Okay. So there's that rectangular. Wow. To hold my USB scope the correct way. You could go through and you could break off that piece on the keyboard, or kind of go through and maybe do a little bit of a plug that had that pin broken off, and just as a short little cord or something else with another plug, so that it would seat a little bit further. But Yeah, and it goes in. I mean, that's probably deep enough for that center portion, but I still just have all these pieces. Okay. So that's looking better, except for the kind of the real corners of it. And it's definitely brought out some plastic material with the drill. I'm not compromising the connector in any way, going at the center of that. There's port 1 compared to port 2. I mean, ultimately, I could go through and I could even, I could pull that plug and desolder it, solder in another one from like another planer, a bad planer, something like that might be the source of it. But that's a lot better. In fact, everything else being equal, I think that is effectively done, because it goes through and there it is on the, well, that doesn't really do. I mean, it's relatively staying flush to the plug now. It looks like there's enough material, and it's rounded out the edges and things like that of that hole. But I think that is a. I could wish I could go in at a very small scale and clean up everything, but I'm losing. I don't know if that's the best. Okay. Yeah, still material down in there more than I'd like, but it is. There's port 2 again. Port 1 versus port 2. Quite a bit of difference. But I think I've gotten through. You kind of see the rounding of that, the top of that. A little bit more of that recess. Yeah, it's good enough. I think that's a good enough with that plug. That's seated in there. I mean, that looks a lot better than what it was when I started it. So a video about drilling out tiny little hole based on the little tools I had available to me. That looks like the Dremel removed the most material and maybe rounded out that recess a little bit more, but that's fine. I think for not having to desolder that connector and replace it or coming up with some other solution there, that should work well enough. And at least on the Mol 30, if I only had to use the keyboard, I could have just gone to that port 2. But, well, I mean, I'd like to get it where I could plug both the mouse and the keyboard in at the same time to go through and use this planer a little bit more. So I did it. And if you enjoy this content, click on that like button. And as always, subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. But this is IBM Museum. That's all I have for now. Thank you.